Well, look, I think that the reality of Brexit is, without getting into too much about the rights and wrongs of it, is that it's really shown that there is quite a cultural split in this country and that people have become very tribal. And I think there's a real danger that people descend, as we talk about, the digital revolution, that kind of thing, into their kind of social media bubbles or, filter bubbles, and that they end up in a situation where there's just a vast cultural divide in society. And I think what's really important is that politicians don't seek to exploit that. They try and find ways to unite people. There's a huge number of issues that once we finally get past coronavirus and Brexit, that this country's going to face. And that's going to require a lot of united effort. And I fear sometimes that there's an awful lot of division and tribalism and not enough preparedness to work together. So look, I think we've actually moved from a 24-hour news cycle into something that I call a 360 media cycle. And what I mean by that is that you're completely surrounded by news all the time. The next deadline is the amount of time it takes somebody to type a tweet. So you've gone from a situation where the deadline's the top of the next hour to the deadline is constant. And so that is an incredibly stressful environment. I think that what you need to do is develop tactics to deal with that. You need to be supple and lithe enough to be able to respond quickly and effectively, to not be constantly engaged in tactics and being bogged down in terms of dealing with things, and also have a big strategy as well that you'll really remain focused on. The danger is you get sucked into firefighting constantly, and what you really need to do is be able to put out the fires, but also have a real sense of direction of where you're going, and try and keep to that as well and not get constantly distracted. That's a really big question. I think that on the one hand, I think you are going to continue to see frothy clickbait. I do think you're going to find some sort of more niche providers, like, for example, the FT, the New York Times, Economist doing extremely well and continuing to do well. I think mainstream media still is struggling to find its place and purpose in this world. How does it fit? What are people looking for? People are often wanting more tailored services that fit their wants and needs. And I think that quite often mainstream media has struggled to keep up with that. The other big worry, I think, is that journalism does not make lots of money. In the past, journalism has been invested in a huge amount. And what we're seeing at the moment is as you have more and more outlets and more ways of communicating. You have podcasts, vodcasts, Instagram, Twitter, online, print, you name it, it's there. Journalists are spread thinner and thinner with fewer and fewer resources. And I think that's a concern. Going forward, we need to see journalism that's properly invested in. And until it can make a profit or find ways of making profit, that becomes quite difficult.